Something keeping you up at night? There's a prescription for that. I'm going to share with you all a little secret. This is Animal Songs, aka The Wizard's Compass, which I did discover, though it's taken me a few extra years to fill in the details. Either way, all the answers are here, in Violet and with the birds. You'll see what I mean momentarily. Until then, sit back, relax, and watch the show, in your head, on screen, through the dots of your own eyes. Into the night, it takes its leap, a journey into sound. Shut your eyes and see. Initiation. Bat. I am sitting in a rocking chair in the corner of my bedroom, feeling painful music. A purple earplug sits in each of my ears, but still I can hear the thudding male voice, as if the plugs are acting as antenna, hairs of extra thick diameter, the better to hear that brutal bass. I feel him in my chest, and it's true, the waves are physical. I can't understand what he's saying, but you could say, I know the tune by heart. I've played it many times myself. My name is... that's my name. Trust that I'm not joking. Call me. I spend every day sitting in this chair listening to the world. The room is a small cell in the northwest corner of an apartment building, a yellow house subdivided into separate units. I suppose I'm an eavesdropper. When I first began this routine, I was only listening for birdsong. Very often I would sing my frustration. The birds are difficult to transcribe. My quest was to learn their secrets. It is written in my book of Persian hymns that the songs these animals sing are the only real wisdom. After many years of study in the realms of man, I was out of information. I hold several specialized degrees, all in subjects that I've grown to despise. How I found the Persian ideas is a long, rather boring story about a boy who was lost in a library for 40 days. He hid among the reference books, between stacks of thick encyclopedias. It was a game. When the guards or janitors came through the aisles on their nightly rounds, he had to cover his mouth to keep from laughing. By candlelight, he read. During the day, he was an ordinary patron, studying great texts with the trusty composition notebook he dutifully filled with concrete details for his future exegesis. He understood very little of what he wrote. Then, one night, as he heard the rattle of the janitor's keychain, he licked his fingers and pinched out his candle and ran for the crack in the shelves of black encyclopedias, only to discover that a librarian had blocked the scene with his cart. Panicking, he ran along the aisles, hunched below the great glass windows, for God knew who could be outside watching. On his toes, he crept to the corner of the room, while the janitor's flashlight beam rolled over the wall. Just as the light fell on the corner, on his shoulders, his ribs, his hips, the boy felt the firm grip of 6 rough hands pull him through the bookcase. The last thing he heard was the jingling step of the janitor, who then sniffed, presumably, the faintly dying smoke of a recently extinguished candle. On the other side of the wall was darkness. A subtle drip echoed in this black cavern. It was cold and endless. The boy called out, but there was no response. However, he had his trusty army green backpack home to his sacred notebook and candle. In the front compartment, he kept his box of matches. Producing these, he lit his candle, and he saw where he really was. Since then, I have kept the Persian hymnal close at hand. It contains only short verses, fragments from ancient stories, some familiar, others entirely foreign. What does it mean, say, that though he crashed his ship upon the shore, yet in that wrong there were 1,000 rights? Who was he? The story is just there beyond my sight, though the message is clear. All my years at the university were spent consuming facts. I was proud to contain so much knowledge. Then when I needed it most, I found no scrap of information in my references that could help me to understand. You see, I have learned. Foolishly, I set out from the library, my hymnal, notebook, and candle secure in my bag of tricks, with 2 goals in mind: to apply my scholarly rigor to the mysteries of the Persians, and to explain, by force if necessary, the answers to these riddles to all those with ears to hear them. These goals have not changed. However, how I define each of the words in those statements has been utterly transformed. The songs the birds sing are simple and repetitive, at least in the ordinary way of hearing. The ear is simple, too, in the ordinary way of seeing. A hole lined with hairs, sculpted with bone, ending at a film of flesh lined with stalactites of music. It grew naturally. Like a bird song, it occurred naturally. What motivates the dove to coo, the sparrow to twitter, the parrot to mock, the crow to caw, the dog to bark, is what motivates. Let me explain it to you this way. A long time ago, in a land far, far away, there was nothing but a patch of dirt. A road ran through this barren land, and though many travelers passed by this empty place, no one stopped, for there was nothing here to hold their interest, and there were many incredible places just beyond the horizon. There was a river there, and people settled along the water where they could fish and drink and live. Then one night there was a storm of such rage and power that it overfilled the river, flooded the town, and the water swept far down the road. This was not an ordinary storm, but it was the work of a jealous wizard, whose story we will get into later. The rain fell for at least 40 days, and from that disaster the river gave birth. It filled the road with water, and the cold stream was born. The water carried seeds to the patch of dirt. Overnight a forest grew. The old river flooded the plain, becoming an ocean. Any travelers that came along the old road were met with the cold river, and they stopped in the forest and they established a new settlement. And no one knew that there had ever been anything different, except the people of the old town. Far beneath the waves, the drowned bodies listened. Their flesh melted into the water, becoming the salt of the ocean. Somehow the skeletons formed a ring, and while the water worked at their bones, their smiling skulls opened their mouths and sang, drip, drip, drip. Though I crashed my ship upon the shore, I managed to survive. You see, in my arrogance, I had courted a mermaid. My head was full of stories that I didn't have enough sense to understand. I snuck aboard the SS Paramore, believing that the high seas held nothing but noble adventures. In the proud posture of a hero, I held a dagger between my teeth and hoisted the mainsail. I learned from the crewmen the routines of nautical life. I studied their knots, and I even invented some of my own improvements on the sheep shank, the bowline, the daisy chain. I told no one my true intentions, but at night, with that jeweled dagger, I whittled fragments of driftwood into scaly tails, laughing heartily at the dream I would make come true. Now, this ship was a simple cargo vessel delivering Indian imports to the port of Boston, where I had boarded. Though I had stuck into the cargo bay, my hard work and electric spirit earned me the favor of the crew. The work was straightforward, and I was praised often. I thought I could do no wrong. We were very near our destination when I made my mistake. The ship is always in motion, so at night the routines continue. I was one of the few men kept on hand one evening, alert and attentive on the starboard bow in case anything should go wrong. I, of course, had ulterior motives. Feigning alertness, I leaned against the ship rail, feeling the salty freezing drops on my face as my eye peered into the water, a flash of silver maybe, and I'd have her. The waves were black in the night sky, and I contemplated how it was truly what was above that I was looking at below. I remembered my experiences with the water. As a boy, I'd studied her from the balcony of a hotel in Mexico, where I'd stood against an adobe railing much like the rail I leaned against now, but of an entirely different material and structure. And I'd looked out from the torchlit patio, the blazing brazier lighting up my right hemisphere, so that I had to squint at the night-dark sea. I imagined I could control the waves. Like a conductor, I raised my hands, and I was indeed in a tiny tuxedo. I was in attendance of a Christmas fiesta at my Mexican grandmother's residence, a small condo adjacent to this hotel. Every year we had made this destination where my mother and father enjoyed proving that they knew Spanish. There was always something sinister about this place that I felt just behind the surface. Yet the staff smiled and praised my parents' skill. Yes, we were indeed part Mexican by blood, but this place, what was this place? How did it come to be? I wore a bow tie, the employees wore bow ties, but mine was black and theirs maroon, which matched their vests, and they wore no coat. Why? What did it all mean, and why did it feel so sinister? I raised my arms and yearned to conduct my symphony. My grandmother, who made all this possible, was dead. Suddenly, at this exact series of thoughts, a glint caught my eye. It became a brilliant flash, then no more. I thrashed on the handrail. I had a foot atop the railing before I had a better idea. A thread of silver darted beneath the boat. A ray of moonlight, I thought, gripping my hands tightly on the railing. Suddenly, dozens of brilliant tails shot across the surface. I watched them cross to the other side. I ran to port side, panting, ignoring the cocked eyebrows of my shipmates. I watched a feathery fish fin flip below the waves. There, I cried, pointing. I turned to the nearest sailor, a brawny New Englander called Fitzsimmons, and I laughed, the words whispering forth between my chuckles. They're real. All right, mate, he said, stepping toward me. He patted a warm palm on my shoulders. I swatted him off. You don't understand. I could feel my grin stretching maniacally. Look, it's right there. Fitzsimmons took a step backwards. Maybe I better get the captain. Nonsense, I said. They're leading us to their island. Cackling, I ran into the wheelhouse. I don't need to tell you what happened next. I took control. Squinting at the fragments of moonlight flashing on the distant waves, I relieved the man at the wheel and locked the door behind him. As he pounded on the glass, demanding to know what was going on, I spun the wheel after those dancing silver lights, and I discovered what those tails really were. When I opened my eyes, it was daylight, and I lay on the sand, surrounded by the washed-up remnants of a shattered ship. The tall rocks behind me glistened in the daylight like shark's teeth, and I saw that their trail extended out into the ocean depths, each brilliant peak all the more visible under the glaring sun, for the water was truly clear. Alone on this unknown shore, I couldn't help but think of my mother, because I stood on the sand, and just as surely because last night I'd remembered my visits to Mexico and my dream of orchestrating the waves, I recalled a time when I'd walked along the beach with her. She was blonde like the sunshine, and I was worried that because of her pallor she would burn, though we said nothing about such fears as we strolled along the rocky sand, scanning for special seashells. I held my trusty yellow bucket, already quite full of white and purple spirals. As I added a new shell, wide and fan-shaped, I looked into the bucket at my findings. You could hear the ocean in there, I thought. My mother was saying something. I hopped onto a large boulder, and she climbed the hill of sand to my right. I saw it first, and I halted. We'd reached the end of the beach, which was littered with boulders like the one I stood atop. On the last boulder before the cliff wall, there lay a large black form. "Mom," I said. My voice was more curious than afraid. She was talking about the plans for the day or her childhood memories of collecting seashells with her sisters, quite possibly telling me how the illusion of hearing the ocean was caused by the wind resonating in the shell canal when she heard me. She looked up and gasped. I jumped to the next boulder. "Don't touch it," she said, but she stepped onto the boulder too. Together we tiptoed one boulder closer to inspect the mysterious form. The final stone stood before the vine-covered cliff wall like an altar to the sun, which was raised directly overhead like a spotlight. The form on the rock was black and ambiguous, and my mind worked to unfold that shadow, invoking different shapes. Was it a fragment of tire, a discarded inner tube, something so exceptionally black that my mind couldn't conjure an analogy? I had to ask my mother. This was something new. It had a snout, like a dog, but the face was expressive, almost primate. It was an animal, but what big swaths of leather. I recognized it even as my mother said its name. Only in books and silly paper Halloween decorations had I seen this creature before me. Now it was real, and nothing like how I had imagined it to be. Its eyes were shut. They sleep during the daytime. I turned to my mother. I can see her face so clearly. She wore sunglasses against the light, so her eyes were masked, a dark rectangle above her nostrils, which were flared in disgust, wrinkled like the thing's snout, and her lips muted in some expression I didn't recognize. "Oh," she said, and she sounded worried, like when I'd come to her with a problem that she didn't know how to solve. She looked at me, then at the creature. "Who put it there, Mom?" I said. "What happened to it? Is it sleeping?" She didn't have to explain it to me. The truth was obvious, though the particular cause of death will remain forever beyond the veil. It was the first time I'd ever seen a corpse. What I couldn't wrap my head around, and what still perplexes me about the scene today, though for very different reasons, is that it was daytime. Death goes with night, like this mysterious emissary laid on the rock before me. I stood on a sunny beach in Mexico before a black shadow of death, and in those antitheses a light was cast. Remembering all this then, I turned to my left, half expecting to see the bat on its altar. Instead, a thick forest extended before me. Something bumped my leg, a piece of shipwood I thought as I kicked it. I turned to see the puffy, bleached face of Fitzsimmons floating away from me. I dared not turn around to see the rest of the flotsam watching in on the tide. With no other recourse, I crossed the sand for the tree line, trying to shake the wreck from my thoughts, and in the far back of my mind, the question unbidden and unwelcome. I wondered whether these woods were home to any bats. This has been Animal Songs, written and performed by Jamie Holcomb, produced by Supermoon. Find us on TikTok, YouTube, or at our website, gosupermoon.com. That's GOSUPERMOON.com. You can also find our work alongside many other talented artists at looksees.com, LOOK-SEES.com. The Bat chapter will continue in the next episode. Until then, thank you for listening.
All I got to say is, glory be, the funk's on me. I want to see you where you go.